Badram karnebhi shrnuyama devaha Bhadram pashyemakshabiryajatraha Stirairangaihi tushtuvagam sastanubhihi Vyashema devahitam yadayuhu Svastina indro vrdhashravaha Svastina pusha vishwavedaha Svastina starkshyo arishtanemihi Svastino brahaspatir dadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We've been speaking of two birds. One of them is consuming fruits of different tastes, bitter, sweet, sour, and every time it does, it gets a jolt of pain and pleasure, depending on what fruit it consumes. And this is going on for a long time for this bird. And so it starts to learn that all fruits, more or less, have more or less a similar flavor. It's just flavor, end of the day. And so they also recognize the tree, we call it the Ashwatha tree, which means that which won't be there tomorrow. This tree is changing. Every day, life experiences are changing. People are coming and going. Friends are coming in your life. And those that you have known for a long time can magically, or not so magically, also leave. And it's very surprising. I thought this is for a life, but it doesn't turn out like that. And other things that you never thought would last for a lifetime. So this tree, which is quite unpredictable, never thought I would end up with you. We have an image of this tree, what the tree is like, what the tree is not like, what the tree is supposed to be like, what the tree should be like, and what the tree shouldn't be like. And so we argue with this reality. We want the red light to turn green, but it doesn't work. So we argue with the reality. Come on, I want it to be green. I want it to be orange. Okay, it's red. Sometimes we want the light to be red, sometimes green. So we are arguing with the stoplight, arguing with life. And so this bird argues with the tree. But the tree has its own intelligent design, governed by its own orders, and those orders are never violated. They never disappear. They always work. And if the person chooses to violate them, then the bird experiences a consequence. And so the bird learns that these laws, these rules of the game throughout the tree is non-negotiable. You can't negotiate with these laws. You can talk about them. You can say, I don't believe in gravity. Fall off the building. Gravity works. And so it gives us a sense of security at the same time. There's a certain law, certain order that you and I depend on. We have a certain faith, a certain trust in the order, such as when driving two cars opposite each other, you have faith every day that the person is not going to swirl and crash into you. We have faith whether we like it or not. And so the bird, who is floating and singing and chirping and jumping from branch to branch on the tree, trying to find a way out, a way in, it goes, I want those higher branches. I've been on this lower branch for a long time. And so it starts to look for books, how to attain, how to jump on higher branches. And so it does that. and he has a great time. We call this heaven. It goes all the way to heavenly branch, but it's still within the tree. And then it falls onto a branch called earth. And the branch called earth has many, many, many other branches too, to hang out. So it does this for a long, long time, consuming fruits, eating of different tastes, experiencing, learning. And throughout its process, it says, I need to align to the rules of the game because it is in my self-interest. I don't want to fall anymore. I don't want to trip over. I don't want to break the branches, because if I do, if I am naughty and I keep jumping, the branch breaks. And then the bird realizes, there is something that I could have done. And so the bird learns slowly, how to navigate itself in this world of seeming unpredictability. And it realizes it's not really unpredictable as I thought, because these laws are always working. I can depend upon the laws. In fact, it's my own behavior that makes this world unpredictable. If I follow the rules of the game, do what is to be done, simplify my life, it's not that unpredictable. There's a certain order to it. And so the bird discovers that I've got no choice. Really? I have no choice but to align myself to the rules of the game, which is set up by this grander order, which we call Ishvara, intelligence. And so the bird starts to collect more punyam points, more virtue, more intelligent making decisions, and each decision makes it or puts it closer to someone that is able to tell it about this tree, until it finds a guru bird, Mr. Bird number 2. And so the bird number 2 then says, I'm going to show you the reality of who you are, and I'm going to show you the reality of this tree. And so the first thing that the bird number 2, the guru bird, says is, I'm going to show you Jushtaha, most sought after by all. What could that be? You see, the bird, good. The bird right now doesn't quite say these words, consciousness and Brahman. It doesn't have this vocabulary. But if there's one thing that it knows, is I want freedom from limitation. Because it can't stand limitation. So it wants to free itself. You're right, it wants happiness, because in happiness it is getting a glimpse of that freedom of limitation. And we have all have had glimpses of that. So there's not one person that doesn't relate to this, not one birdie that doesn't relate to this. And thus it pays attention, says, oh, Mr. Bird number 2, you have a action plan for me, you have a means, a pramana by which I can see that I am free of limitations. Yes, you can. And you can see that while living, and that, then the bird number 1 says, is that what they call moksha? Enlightenment, liberation? And is that nirvana? Bird number 2 says, yes, that's exactly it. And there are very few birds who take such interest, for they are still jumping branch to branch. And you are one of those rare birds that has gone through the jumpings and you figured out enough to come to a guru bird. Not all birds get that, because they're still busy in the play. But you have come. Something in you has clicked. Something in you is speaking and saying, this I don't quite get, but it's speaking to me. It's speaking to something in me which I can't quite pinpoint, and yet I want to listen and discover what is it saying. And so bird number 1 sits down and hears about neti, negation, not this, not this. You see, bird number 2 says, let me show you what you are not. Let me start there as the very first step in this methodology. The Guru Bird says, neither can you be the subtle body, because you see, the subtle body is made of thoughts and insights and emotions. And these thoughts and emotions are processes. They're fluctuating up and down. And sometimes there's a gap, and they continue to fluctuate up and down, and there's another gap. And through all of that, there is a observer, there is a witness, in the presence of whom both thought and no thought are recognized for what they are. Because if you were as good as a thought, then your I am should only be over here. The moment there's a gap or silence, the I am should disappear. But that is not true. In fact, your mind is nothing but the 5 elements. The 5 elements, subtle in nature, which is nothing but matter. And all those 5 elements are doing are just reshuffling, molding and shaping like plasticine, based on what the eyes and what the ears hear. And if the thought, which is nothing but doing, a karta, and a thought is also what produces a bhokta, if I was as good as the doer, that means if the thought was very active, very activated and dynamic, then my awareness would be much bigger. And when the thought subsides and it is mellow and smooth and calm and hardly any activity, then I should hardly be aware. And yet that is not the case. I am equally aware of a huge amount of activity and little bit amount of doer activity. Thus, I cannot be the karta nor the bhokta either. If you were as good as personality, that is the causal body, or desires, then we are showing different personalities from work environment to home environment. Sometimes we act professionally. That is just a role. Personality is just a role. And then we come home and we act calmly. At home, we have different kinds of desires from work. At work, we have different desires than with children. So if you were as good as your desires, again, when you have you're filled with desires, then you should exist. When those desires are just calm, you're just calm, no desires, then I should go out of existence. Again, that does not and is not the case for anyone. Thus, I cannot be the gross body, the subtle body, nor the causal body. Now that we've mentioned what you are not, who are you? You are the unchanging, unverbalized, non-participating, non-interfering presence, always known to you as the ever-available I am, which is always obtaining in every thought, in every experience generated by the body and mind, which cannot ever be rid of, which doesn't ever leave, it never ceases, it is the closest thing to you, it's the most familiar to you, it is that which you are. It is the conscious presence which is always known to you as that which is self-revealing and self-known. It doesn't need to be revealed by anything else. You know it as I am, as I, my conscious self is. My conscious self exists. It is evident. And thus, it is then shown this, and this very conscious self is like an all-pervading space which is everywhere. Now, when the gross and the subtle body get born, it is like this. A gross and a subtle body gets born, and it as though confines the all-pervading space. Thus, your I am now is referring to this. And then bird number 2 says, hey, yes, it is like that for a moment because there is a upadhi. Whereas your I am is actually the same I am as the all-pervasive I am. But how do you prove that? Asks bird number 1. How do you prove that my individual I am is your individual I am? And so bird number 1 thinks hard. And then it remembers something that we have spoken earlier. And it says that this very consciousness that we speak of is without attributes. If something has attributes, it is different. If there is blue awareness and yellow awareness, that is a different kind of awareness. So if I ask you, what kind of awareness is your awareness? But then you say, it's blue awareness. Oh, really? If it's blue awareness, then you should always be aware of blue. Is that your experience? No. And then bird number 1 thinks, aha, so for my individual awareness to be equal to your individual awareness, then both of our awarenesses should be without attributes. If you say your awareness is intelligent, that intelligence belongs to the subtle body, because you don't always experience intelligence, especially when you find yourself learning a new game called Rummy or cards or any new game you've never played before. You don't experience intelligence. But any attribute I give to my awareness belongs to a thought. In fact, you can't think of an attribute unless a thought is engaged. Because if one thought was stuck onto you, then you couldn't go to sleep. That thought would bother you. That thought would be with you in your sleep. But what do you say when you sleep? You say, what was there? Nothing was there. The closest you can say is, I guess I was there. In fact, as kids, I don't know if you remember, I remember sleeping as a child, around 9 years old. I knew it was darkness, blackness, deep sleep. Then when we grow up as adults, we kind of, deep sleep. I'm not there in deep sleep. But as kids, I don't know if you can remember. You can ask a child, if you have children, ask them, what do they think about deep sleep? Hey, what's deep sleep like? I know one of my students said, they have children. They said, there's just nothing there. He was very definitive about it, the child was. There's nothing there, Mom. Huh. Children know that. They don't say, something was there. No, the only thing that was there was me. That's how I know there was nothing there. And because I was there, nothing was there. Now that we have mentioned what you are not and what you are, now the question is, so it sounds like there's 2 things here. One is a body and one is awareness. This we have to reconcile. So this is step number 3. Step number 1, neti. Step number 2, shows your nature. Step number 3, reclaim that which I have negated. How do I reclaim that? Satya-mithya relationship. We have used an example of ornament and gold. As many ornaments as there are, there's only one gold. I count 1,000 ornaments with different names and forms, ring, bangle, necklace, etc. I'm only counting one gold. And so when we apply this to, for example, a table, a wooden table over there, we see it has a name. Why? Because there's a form. Because it has a form, we attach a name. And we attach a name so that we can call it table. If I say, bring me wood, what do you bring me? What, a block of wood? So, yeah, bring this whole thing, right? So I have to say, bring me table. Now, table is really just wood. So why didn't I say, bring me wood? I can get what I want for transactional reasons. So I say, bring me a table, please. And then comes a philosophy bird, a little bit challenging bird, says, hey, but I'm not quite sure what do you mean by that, because I only see wood there. And I think, I haven't thought of that. And I say, okay, fine, Mr. Smarty, bring me wood. And then the bird continues, that's okay, but because there's no wood there, you see, it's just cellulose and lignin. And just two molecules put together, they combine and create wood. And I say, okay, fine, then bring me molecules, a bunch of molecules, slap them right here, bunch of molecules. Yeah, but see, molecules, there's no such thing as molecules, there's only atoms, because they're just made of atoms. I'm like, oh God, just give me some atoms then. I need to write on something. Yeah, but see, atom, there's no such thing as atom. It's made of electron, proton, and neutron. Electron cloud circling a atomic nucleus made of protons and neutrons. Fine, Mr. Scientist, give me an atom. Give me protons, neutrons. Yeah, but you see, there's no such thing as proton and neutron because it is just quarks. What's a quark? Well, they're just possibilities. Their possibilities is not tangible. They constantly collapse from state of potential into quark up and quark down. And then when they do, they manifest as a proton and neutron. And they take a certain spin and a certain mass. And then leptons, in other words, electrons, they circulate around the atomic nucleus with a certain speed, with a certain direction, with a certain distance away from the atomic nucleus. And I'm thinking, who designed all of this? Who set this up? Are you telling me that those things that you call quarks are intelligently arranging themselves to form atoms? And atoms are intelligently coming together to form molecules? And molecule lignin plus cellulose comes together to form a tree? And a tree comes together knowing exactly how long to live, how deep the roots are to be, what kind of leaves are to come, what fruits and what vitamins will be in each fruit, in what region will the tree grow, how the leaves will convert sunlight into chemical energy, how the leaves will breathe carbon dioxide, something that we consider toxic for us, and how they will convert that into oxygen. Where is all that in the tree? Where is all that in lignin, in the molecules? Where is that intelligence in the atom? Where is that intelligence in the quark? I don't see it anywhere. I only see the tree and the fruits and the leaves. I only see the effects. Ah, says bird, that is because it is adrashta, it is unseen. And you can know it by the fact that this tree has lots of connections to its environment. It knows how to work with the sun and the soil and the rain. So thus, whoever created the sun, soil, and the rain must have also created the tree, which means the intelligence which put it all together has to be all knowledge. Knowledge about everything, because it puts everything together. And everything that is being put together is made of the same atoms. And if it's put together intelligently, atoms for a tree, it must also put intelligently atoms for everything else, which constitutes the entire universe. And what is this intelligence? Asks bird number one. Well, this intelligence is the very cause of this universe. It was there before time and space came. And how do we know it was there before time and space came? Well, because when Big Bang came, whatever came with it certainly comes together and builds planets and stars and humans and beings and plants and makes them all work together, which means the intelligence must have already, the blueprint must have already been there, from which the entire universe comes, is sustained by, and resolves into. So you're saying that this intelligence is the final building block of life? Well, you see, there is one more reality. And that reality is always known to you as I am. Is it that simple? Yep, it's that simple. That reality, self-evident, self-illumining, self-known, that consciousness, that awareness, which is non-interfering, non-verbalized, non-participating, self-evident I, that is the final substance in the universe, from which everything arises, by which everything is sustained, into which everything resolves. Just like your entire dream world resolves into you, and from you comes again the dream world. What is this intelligence called? Ishvara, which means cause of universe. So what is Ishvara? Asks bird number 1. Well, says bird number 2, you just have to take it a little bit back and go using an order. And we said that the cause is Akshara Brahman, from which arises the potential called Anam, from which arises the blueprint, Hiranyagarbha. From the blueprint arises the world. Now, in the world, you ask, who created this world? And you say, it is a putting together of intelligence. And this intelligence in Sanskrit is called Ishvara. Now, hey, says bird number 1, I also heard that Ishvara can refer to Brahman. Ah, says bird number 2, that's right, because the Upanishads say 2 things so that you don't limit your understanding. Ishvara can refer to both the potential, which is all knowledge and power, but Ishvara can also refer to Brahman. Therefore, all that is here is Ishvara. So what you really mean is, all that is here is intelligence, whose cause is none other than Brahman. All that is here is Brahman obtaining as this by the help of his knowledge and power. All that is here is Ishvara. Okay, well then what's the difference between Ishvara and consciousness, I wonder? Well, says bird number 2, if you want to look at Ishvara as intelligence, then we call Ishvara, Nityatvam means eternally reshuffling itself constantly to account for the changes occurring in the universe. Right now, that intelligence is reshuffling to make this pen fall one by one movement. In that sense, it is eternally reshuffling, manifesting, unmanifesting, and when it's manifesting, even what is manifest is reshuffling. Whereas Brahman, Nityatvam, it is eternally ever itself. Remember, Kutastha, Envil. It is eternally the unchanging substrate of all, the unchanging substance, while Ishvara is reshuffling and moving and reorganizing itself to obtain as this universe. Give me a quick before and after. What is it like to know this? And I say, oh, I am seeing now a name and form, and I take that name form to be real. But bird number 2 says, I also see a name and form, but I cognitively swallow that name and form into its constituents until my cognitive understanding arrives to the final cause. So both are recognizing names and forms, which are nothing but intelligence, with one addition. The wise bird recognizes name and form as a modification of intelligence, and that intelligence, called Ishvara, is, or whose reality is in Brahman. Therefore, what's the relationship between Ishvara and Brahman? It is a Satya-Mithya relationship. Wherever there is Ishvara, that's exactly where the final Brahman is. And that final is known as I am. Can you give me another example? Imagine that there are two waves in the ocean, and you give those two waves eyes. And one of the waves decides to participate with the rules of the game in the ocean. So it starts to do the right things. And slowly, it gains certain punyam, and it comes to a certain wave, a wise wave, and the wave says, you see, wave, you have been seeing yourself as this one of many, and you have been interacting as such in this world. You have tried to make yourself bigger, and you compared yourself to those who are bigger and smaller, which is understandable. But I want to show you, number one, that your existence is not apart from the ocean. And that ocean we call Ishvara, the intelligence by which all waves are able to harmoniously interact together, that keeps us all bound, understanding each other to a certain point. But both, you see, the wave and the ocean, they have their final cause without which they cannot exist. And that final cause that pervades them both is water, H2O. Wherever you look in one wave, you will find none other than H2O. Wherever you look throughout the entirety of the ocean, you will find none other than H2O. Thus, the wise wave can still participate as a wave in the field of Ishvara, understanding that I am never away from Ishvara, because my truth and Ishvara's truth is one. And so it continues to perform its duties. It continues to do what is to be done, never forgetting this simple understanding that they both share the same truth in this moment.
Like when the mischievous philosopher Bert comes and says, provided there's one universe, it needs an intelligent cause. But if we assume there are infinite universes, and this one universe we experience just randomly happened and evolved because it just was one out of infinite possibilities, how can you argue with that?
So this universe self-evolved through trial and error until it found something that is harmonious. My dispute or objection is, then what tells it what is harmonious? What tells one of those universes what is a harmonious order? Because if it has evolved since beginningless time, then what told the universe right now in this state, this is the most harmonious state of affairs?
Why does it need to be harmonious? I mean, it just evolved the way it was because there were infinite possibilities, and one just happened out of random to be what we have here as this universe.
Okay, but you can still say that despite the evolution of the universe, however universes evolved, one to the other, to the other, to the other, there's a certain intelligence throughout every iteration of the universe. And we're speaking of an intelligence that no matter what iteration you speak of, still has an order to it. And how do we recognize that order? We're able to wake up, we're able to sleep, we're able to dream, and there's a certain continuity of that order. So this means if there's a certain continuity to an order, then how can it be random? Because if it's random back then, it should be random right now. That means one day I should be able to, not sleep. Next day I can sleep. One day I'm a woman, next day I'm a man. But there's a certain order in all things that we observe.
So harmony couldn't come out of randomness.
Well, then the question is then, since when did that randomness begin? Because that means that the randomness would have started since beginningless time. Then, okay, so if we are right now here, so that means that what the randomness is going to continue. And yet in this so-called randomness, we talk about an order. We talk about certain predictable orders, such as you give me food, I eat, I survive. There's an order there. So that postulates there's no order. But we argue there is an order, because we can observe an order in all things. And that order doesn't fail us. And also it means that I cannot trust the cause and effect relationship. But all throughout the table, we have seen for every cause, for every effect, there is a cause. So if it's random, it means that cause and effect is not consistent. And yet, all throughout the universe, our history books are full of this has happened, this has occurred. This has happened, this has occurred. Which shows you there's a certain cause-effect intelligent order that never ends. It's predictable. Cause-effect. And the effect isn't the effect always harmony? If there's this harmony, don't we always want to return to harmony, to a harmonious state of affairs? So even if the universe is random, within that random universe, we still align to harmony.
And if it was random, then maybe there was also no dharma to follow.
Of course, now they will say that dharma too has evolved, right? And it's just sort of, it's self-corrected itself. But my question is now, what told it, this is the right state of affairs, which is no hurt. Don't hurt, I don't want to be hurt. Because if it was opposite to that, then there will be no beings here to discuss this. We would have hurt ourselves already. So there has to be some ending that says, this is order. Don't hurt yourself, because that means, randomness means it is polar opposite. It was some other state of affairs. If it was another state of affairs, species can't survive.
Now we're doing the research from the universal view. From the, when we look at the personal view, bird one is the me, the jiva, which is doing all the things which I do, and the second is the sakshi, which sees all things. The consciousness, that's the same. Is that understanding?
Yes, that's why we call it a metaphor here. So ultimately bird 1 refers to the instrument, and bird 2 refers to consciousness.
There are situations
Yeah.
like no one could predict that they look like they just random situation. They're just, but is what you're saying that they are not random, but we only don't see the cause and effect behind it. We were not able to see it. Like it looks like random.
Okay.
Is that?
Okay, that's, yes, possibly. One is because we don't understand it, we call it unpredicted, we call it random.
Yeah.
But look at this. Now there will be one more argument. There is a certain phenomena in the universe. They say there is a chaos, random. Vedanta says it's still predictable. The fact that it's random, it will always be random. So there's still an order there.
Okay, yeah, the randomness is the
The fact that it's always going to be random, that very fact is an order of itself. That I can rely upon.
But also what Ernesto says, is it right thinking? Like something happening, it's not random. It looks like random because we cannot see or grasp or whatever what the cause behind it is.
Yeah, that's not really much of an issue because as an adult, you would probably get to the bottom of it, right? For maybe someone that doesn't understand, I mean, yes, you say, I don't understand, it's random, but I just don't see the cause-effect relationships. Just like the story of the two boys who went to the temple. One of the boys went to the temple and the other didn't. And they thought this is just completely random. I found a coin, I just tripped over, and I just hurt my knee. But that was already owing to their past causes. One could have broken a leg, and the other would have found a treasure. So it seems random that I just found a golden coin, and I just tripped over, and I hurt my knee, but there is something unseen that I don't see, because of which this has occurred.
And even in quantum physics now, they observe that when one movement in the universe is happening, the same movement happens somewhere else, and they don't know why. A predictable, repetitive experiment, and they observe the effects, but they can't understand the cause.
Yeah. It's similar to superposition of quarks, right? You don't know whether they're going to go quark up or quark down, which way they're going to spin. Typical. So it seems like, so it's completely random. But by the time it manifests as quark up or down, from then on it has an intelligent function for everything that's going to be made out of those atoms. So is it really random? If it was already heading towards building a carbon, a hydrogen, a helium atom, can it be random? Because if it was random, it would never build the atom. So even if it's in superposition, you don't know whether it's here or here is there. The point is, when it manifests, everything that it's about to manifest from then on has an intelligent function in the world. So was it really random?
Before we had the microscope, we never realized all these layers that we can see now. So then when people fell ill, they thought it was random, or it was God, or it was the thunder doing it.
True. So that's a good point. So the more we understand about the universe and the laws and the orders, the less random it is. The more I understand it's a cause-effect relationship. And Vedanta makes it so clear that there's no such thing as, so-called accident here. It's a web, highly complex, intelligent web. Everything has a ripple effect to something else. And we just don't see it because our minds is tiny. It's like an ant trying to understand you. It's like a good bacteria in your stomach. They're having a great time right now. They have a family there, partying. And here you are, you're this big, ginormous being. And they're inside going, I wonder who this Purusha is. Right? They can't capture, they can't grasp the vastness of you as this person. In that same way, we are like a little good bacteria, can't grasp the vastness of this web, which we call random.
I still want to ask something, is maybe, I'm not sure if I can put it right, about the wording of I am. The I am, which is the substratum of everything, is existence. I am existence and consciousness. But we often say consciousness is all. We only use the one. The consciousness is existent, but it's using two words, but actually it's one.
Got it. Okay, got it. So you want to know when is a context to be used for consciousness and when is the context to be used for existence. Okay, simple. So remember that we said we always start from the top, Brahman, and we said it is defined with two most accurate words. Why do we use Sat and Chit? If I want to show you the moon, then I have to use very accurate words to point to the moon. I can't say square. Is square keeping with the moon? No. So I have to say at least round. Okay, I've got my word number one. I have to say up, right? That's at least number two. And I have to say, what else? light, bright, right? So I use 3 words very accurate, keeping with the original object. So now like that, to show this reality, the rishis have come up with 3 most accurate words, and the first one is existence. We said existence is always recognized as the isness in every form. Table is. Why table is? Because wood is supplying itself. Wood is. Why? Because the molecules are supplying themselves. But molecules is because atoms are supplying themselves. So there's always a supplier. The isness is known in rocks and anything that is insentient. That's how you recognize this reality in insentient forms. Insentient means it's not alive. But then how do you recognize it in a human being? Well, you recognize it also not only as I is, but also I consciousness. I am consciousness. Now, why is it that rocks cannot reflect the consciousness aspect of Brahman? It doesn't have a subtle body. Whereas we have a subtle body, like a mirror. Suppose your mind is a mirror. Does a mirror hold the light? Or it just reflects the light? It just reflects the light. Your mind is like a mirror, and thus it reflects this reality, and this reflection is known to you as I am. The rock cannot say I am. So even though everything is I am, the rock cannot say that, but you need to give a certain kind of a reflective matter called the subtle matter, subtle mirror, called the subtle body. And when this reality shines, when this reality pervades this subtle matter, not only is this reality known as existence, because you know you exist, but you also know I am aware. Therefore, consciousness is also known to a sentient being. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam eva avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.